again, you if you just preached as a nine if you just preached as a 19th century Boston preacher in a very proper fashion, that's no sin.
And I wasn't
And
trying to be proper. I was actually preaching comfortably. It apparently came across as
no,
control.
but
Right.
maybe we're defining proper different.
Which is,
I don't,
well, no, I have
you
no
didn't
problem with
come
the term.
across as fake. You didn't come across, when I say proper, that's not necessarily a wrong thing, but you were definitely, again, not being folksy. You were being very proper,
Right.
very controlled in your English. And you weren't, and I'm not at all suggesting you should start faking some Southern accent.
Right.
Faking's
No.
always the bad thing. That's always horrible.
No, no.
But is there a sense to be charitable to the congregation and know the people the Lord has given you to try and meet them someplace where they're at?
Right.
And if it's
Absolutely.
a culture, and if it's just about a cultural convention where they would, and obviously you never compromise the message.
No, of
And
course.
that's, as a preacher, that's always one of the hardest things, taking criticism, because you want to take constructive criticism, but unfortunately, a lot of the heretics will hide their false teaching and other criticism.
Right.
And it's really hard to discern, okay, that's a valid criticism. I should work on that. It's like, no, you don't understand. You need to repent.
Right.
That's one of the hardest things for a pastor to discern. But is I'm again comparing Greg 1 and Greg 2. Greg 1's style
Yes, the style.
was much more relaxed. It came across much more relaxed,
Right.
much more conversational, much
Right.
more natural. And that's what our culture really likes.
So then does
Our,
that make it more accessible and should that then be the
yes.
focus?
I think,
Okay.
and
Right.
again, we're not dealing with right or wrong now. We're just dealing with
Well,
polishing
I
things.
mean, we're
But
dealing
yeah,
with contextually
yeah.
superior and
So
inferior.
when I listened to you, I was like, oh, he's in preaching mode. And that's not a bad thing, but we've talked, so I know what's going on in your mind a little bit. You want to have that or bring back that formal way of speaking, you know, to honor God. Also could be a personal thing.
Right.
Um, but when it comes to the people of God,
Right.
I think they would have a better time hearing that if it was in a more common way of speaking.
Right.
Though you're not actually changing that much. Again, it's so hard because style is so in a way
Well, I mean,
subjective.
it does change. You're not
Because
wrong.
like you could bring up Felicity, and it's like look, I'm not talking about some woman. You make a joke or something, and we can have that whole conversation on humor in sermons. But then you explain Felicity briefly and move on.
I,
But you
I
have
tried
that.
humor, and in the
Yeah,
hindsight, listening to it again, it sounded
yeah,
really scathing, and I kind of felt
yeah,
bad that I threw it in there because it wasn't.
yeah. Oh
I
no,
made I
yeah,
made a
yeah, yeah,
joke about allegiance to being a Tennessean more so than being
yeah,
a U.S.
yeah,
citizen, and
yeah,
after the fact, and I'm like, wow, that was
yeah.
that was like poking at all the Tennesseans.
Yeah, I know.
I'm like, but I'm more
I guess I
Tennessean
like
than I
that
am an
part. So,
American. No,
but
no, no, no,
I'm a
no. You're
Yankee.
not wrong.
But
The other point
so,
is that I was reading from
well,
a
that's
written
another
sermon.
conversation. And we're,
Oh, I
by the
was
way,
reading
10
from
minutes
a
over.
written sermon as
Yeah,
opposed to preaching from bullet points. And again, this was intentional
yeah.
because I have had a one-page bullet point sermon that took me an hour to get through.
Can you have both?
You can if you're good at it, and I'm not. That's the point. So,
It.
my point
Yeah,
of not using bullet points but to write was to keep it between 30 to 45 minutes, which I achieved, and I'm very
yeah,
happy about that. The next thing of work is reading naturally. I can do. I chose not to. Like, I made no effort to read
and,
naturally. I
and,
can. Like, I can just look at this and go, much of our time on Earth in this life is often spent and wasted on trying to make this place feel like home, right? I can
yeah,
read
and
it much
John, you
more.
in the back, you understand that. Yep. Okay,
I
let's
can
keep.
read much more naturally
Yeah,
instead of
yeah,
concisely. So
Yep.
yes, I'm going to write out my sermons because if I don't, I will end up with a pointless hour long
Yep. And that's
whatever.
bad.
I
And
know
so
my weakness. I am trying a solution. Right. We're
and
attempting to
trying to
correct a
find that
problem.
balance, working with, trying to improve, but with the limitations everyone has is hard. Again, for me, I do not write out my sermons. I give massive notes
Right.
because I want to try to have some structure, and notes hopefully put some structure to it. But when I read, I'm a very poor reader, but then I read like this and it's horrible.
Why are
But
you
when I
yelling
go
at
and I do
us? Right.
what, right? Why are you angry?
Why are you
But when I,
angry?
like, for instance, when I go and listen to my sermons, 'cause I have to do auto editing, and it is a good thing listening to your sermons, no matter how painful it is. I make so many mistakes because of the dyslexia, because of just poor public speaking. I
Right.
stumble over words. I'll say the wrong words. I would rather have that than be proper in my diction.
Right.
I would rather offend a Harvard University speaking instructor from the 19th or sermon preaching instructor from the 19th century than offend the deacon who's wearing flannel in my congregation.
But
And
if
that's a choice
I
I've made.
right,
Now,
but if
yeah,
I can read my
yeah,
sermon
yeah, I can't do that. You can.
naturally and
Yeah,
without error,
yeah,
then wouldn't that
yeah,
be the goal?
yeah.
Right.
And with the occasional, again, I'm not saying fake folksy,
My
but can
jokes
you
don't
have the best of
land.
both worlds? Can you have
I thought it was funny.
conversational, that more
Right.
conversational tone of Greg 1 with the organization and the detail
Right.
of Greg 2?
Right.
Now, there are a few people, and let me give you an example. To me, a phenomenal preacher is Vodi Bachman. He is phenomenal. And by the way, like good, if you want to learn to write, read good writers, listen to good preachers. He
Right.
is phenomenal. And he has like the whole package. Great voice, great structure. You feel like he's talking right at you, and and yet there's detail that's amazing. Just randomly pick any of his sermons and listen to one of his sermons, and it's like, I joke around when I grow up, I want to be like him. So I think that's a thing to strive to work for. Because it was very formal, and you were intentionally being formal. I'm not sure if that's
Well, I was comfortable being
wise.
formal. I guess to be fair, I was comfortable in being
Yeah,
formal and controlled
yeah,
for the personal reasons that I listed. I wasn't
yeah,
necessarily trying, and I certainly don't mean to say or imply
yeah,
that there is a proper or improper handling of preaching tied to style, right? I'm not going to say that a Southern preacher or a folksy sermon
yeah.
is inferior or superior to any other. If you now, if you're trying to tug at people's heartstrings to get them to feel something and you're just deliberately emotionally manipulating your audience, that's a totally different problem.
Yeah.
That is an issue.
And
But if you have a
and
style of speaking or preaching, you're not you're not taking it seriously by not being
yeah,
a Harvard trained educate because
yeah.
I have no training or education in any of this. Uh, so
But there is in different times in history where different styles are demanded. Like, arguably one of the greatest preachers of all time is John Chrysostom. The Golden Mouth
mhm.
was his title because he was such a phenomenal preacher. From what I've heard, preaching back his time and his location, it was much more combative. It was rowdy. People would ask questions. People start yelling at him, and he would
Awesome.
like fire back. I'm like, I want that
I want
actually.
that.
That'd
That
be
would be great. Don't aim
amazing. Oh yeah, just
don't
have like a
amen me. Challenge me. Let's
yeah,
go.
and let's have a debate on the floor. Absolutely. And and so that was
I think
just the
that's a little
style back
unbiblical
then.
though. Worship is
Yeah.
supposed to be orderly.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with that. But it, so it's such a balance because again,
I
I mean, you're obviously a herald, and so you have to fear the Lord and what
right,
he wants. And he cares for his people, but he also cares very much his word be spoken correctly.
right,
Third commandment.
right. Which is a matter of
And yeah.
content, not necessarily style.
Yeah.
Right.
So, like I said,
I
I
want to
think that would be
I want
again.
to
It's
ask
a
a
minor
question.
thing. Yeah. Yeah. Please.
I have a
And we're going way
question.
over, but go for it.
No, I don't
Yeah.
care. I have a
Yeah.
question. This is important.
Bonsai. Yeah.
Um, and now I've forgotten all the things.
Okay.
Oh, all right. No. And because you made the point, and I want to pick it apart. You're not
Yeah.
wrong. Again, I agree about the vulgar. It's intentional. It should be intentional. We should be vulgar in our preaching. Common, accessible. Vulgar also has a totally different meaning this day and age.
Yeah. Yeah. For the folks in the audience, we don't mean
Right.
vulgar in the
Vulgar
swearing
doesn't
sense. We
mean
mean
offensive.
common. Yeah. It just
Right.
means common. Yeah.
It's Latin.
Yeah.
It just means
Yeah.
common. I'm going to say vulgar because I'm Latin and not Greek. I'm not using koine. Nobody says koine. So it should be common. It should be vulgar.
Yeah.
My question, and I kind of want to, because even you using Vodi Bakum as an example,
Amazing.
his style attracts a certain audience. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that his style is demanded of by certain audiences. So my question is, if recent Sunday Greg style, if that were my style of preaching, it may not necessarily be what's in demand for this particular congregation. And as long as it doesn't alienate, right? If I'm still able to be followed, if people don't think that I'm
Then do
being
it.
condescending or offensive or
Yep.
confusing, right? If I am vulgar enough that everybody's following along,
Yep.
and that is my style, whether or not it's the vulgar style of the region, should I change?
No. And again, that's why I said my first piece of sermon advice is don't try to keep everyone happy, even
Right.
those who are trying to critique your sermon or preachers. If that is what you're most comfortable
I
at,
was
and
comfortable reading the way
and
that I
that's
read and speaking the way
and
I
you're not
spoke.
being and you're not being too crazy, then by all means do that.
How come
By
if
all means.
Jonathan Edwards can do it, then
Right.
can't we all?
But I've heard Greg version 1.
Right.
And Greg version 1 merged with Greg version 2. I think the folks in the pews would be
Right. And that's the point to consider, that it's
eh,
great that I'm comfortable with
yeah,
being version 2.
yeah,
Ray, good for you.
yeah,
But if I can be comfortable being version 1 and have the structure of
yeah,
2, wouldn't that be the better standard or goal?
yeah.
Right. I mean, really, it comes down to read more naturally, which is not an insurmountable task for me. Like I said, it's
I
something that
can't
I'm
do it. You can
capable
do
of
it.
doing. I
Yeah.
just chose not to.
Well, I mean, also, when it comes to criticism, it's always good to ask other people. I'd be curious, Claude's criticism
No,
of some of your elders.
which I will. I mean, I'll end
Yeah,
up just probably
yeah.
releasing this beforehand to our Bible study
Because
chat and be like, everybody,
he obviously knows the congregation vastly better than I
a
do.
whole lot better than I do. Right.
Yeah. So
Yep.
I'd be
Maybe
curious
I'm
to listen to it.
also just conditioned to speak to voice dictation, where you have to enunciate everything perfectly in order for it to be accurately recognized. And I've just gotten so into the habit of this obnoxiously controlled, deliberate enunciation so that my stupid phone will pick it up correctly. Maybe I'm spending too
No,
much
no.
time talking to technology instead of other human beings.
Well, no.
No,
Again,
honestly, that very way,
no, no. Again,
that might actually be an influence.
it wasn't. Again, this is really not like. Again, this is not some major criticism. This
The
is just
machines are
to
bad.
have a conversation because I wrestle with it myself. But I know you can do the other,
Hmm.
and our culture very much wants a more conversational approach. And
And we all know I care what the culture wants. No, I'm
yeah,
joking.
exactly.
Um, uh,
But
but that's not. I mean, it's not bad
yeah,
because again, as I always make the argument,
yeah,
and it's funny hearing it from you. I'm the one always harping on the second point of eloquence and the
yeah,
orator, which is to delight. Right
yeah,
now, Augustine says that the proclamation of the truth in and of itself ought to be a delight, but to speak in a way that is easy to hear and makes the truth accessible, understandable, and pleasant, isn't that a beautiful thing to work toward? And so,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, having um, it's good to have both, and if you can
Yeah.
have both, then why not? Right? Why
Yeah.
not have the water in the golden cup if you can manage?
Right. And but again, it's such, I'll use the word
Mm.
again, balancing act, because you're trying to keep several things going together. Because another thing, how can I put this? I'm going to come across. Oh, I'm going to make it totally crass.
There
Comparing preaching with Dungeons and Dragons, sure, why
you go.
not?
At least it's
You
not
know,
Star Trek.
yeah, we just Star Trek, absolutely role playing Star Trek game. But it's one thing player characters forget is the dungeon master has to be enjoying himself too. And in one sense, obviously, you're Herald. You're not there for your personal enjoyment.
Right?
That would be a very bad thing.
Yes.
But if you're
Publicity.
enjoying it, that's also going to come out and make it
Yes.
more enjoyable. Dare I use that word for a sermon?
No,
More
it's fine.
enjoyable for the crowd because it's
Right.
like, he actually believes this. He's
Right.
taking this seriously.
There's nothing wrong with
This is,
being, yeah.
and what?
There's nothing
There's nothing
wrong
wrong with joy, of course.
there's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with felicity in your own sermon.
Yes, there we are. Correct use. Sure. Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And
Get
so,
educated. Yeah.
yeah, I can't read a book. Anyways, it so there is that. And like I said, that took me years to figure out. I'm like, look,
Right.
if you don't like didactic sermons, oh well.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, oh well. And but yeah, it's interesting. I'm rambling now. It's interesting what the strength is, how much do you work on something,
Right.
and there's so many different subjects to go into.
No,
So,
and that's fine. And to your point, yes, I there was there were a number of aspects in this sermon which were without emotion for me as well. Like
yeah,
it is the truth. It is that which I believe.
yeah,
I didn't have a bad time preaching it,
yeah,
but none
yeah.
of it was really like, ooh, I will because I'm a huge nerd. And again, though none of it should ever be for us primarily, and it was completely theologically, historically, and thematically appropriate. I loved the breakdown of Philippians 3:20
Oh,
because
it was best part of the sermon. The
I
ending was amazing.
enjoy
Yeah,
the historic context
yes.
and the fact that I got to be a nerd
Roman. Yeah.
about the Roman Empire in a sermon was a lot of fun for me. And so I'm like, I get to talk about Macedonia. Why is this exciting? And you'll notice I kept it very light as far as technical details. I
Yep.
didn't
Smart.
tangent into the history of the Mediterranean region, which I could have, but I
Or,
didn't.
or the Centurions, or why
Or the
Philippi is a colony.
centurions,
Yep, yep. Oh,
or
it's amazing.
colonies,
Yep.
or Roman law. Like
Yep.
I didn't go
Oh,
into the details. I could have and I would have liked to.
oh, that's a skill when you write out your sermons and you have this amazing section that you love,
Like,
that it's a great joke, it's a great story, it's just a wonderful information for the congregation,
uh-huh.
and it doesn't fit in the sermon and you have to cut it out. You're like,
Let me beat you over the head with first
but
century Roman
but
history for an
but
hour.
it's like, but no, I gotta cut it. That takes some skill,
I'm like,
and
it
that's
was
hard to
fine.
do.
But to that point,
Yeah,
getting into the actual Philippians text was very enjoyable, not only for the, nerdy
yeah,
historical Roman point, but also theologically. It was when researching that text, a
yeah,
beautiful
yep.
theological text. And so the theology of it itself was also very enjoyable, very exciting for me. Um, so yes, I guess enjoying me enjoying, although because like I said, I am bored with my pointless sermons, and if I'm bored preaching it, I can only imagine what everybody else is suffering through.
Well,
So
well, also
on the
there, but
flip
also,
side, if
yeah, sorry.
I enjoy the sermon, then at least it's something human, because I've also heard sermons that are read. It's word
Yeah.
for word read. And again,
Yep.
the sermon itself can be great. And
Yeah.
that's what we should primarily be focused on and concerned on. It does take more effort on as a listener to get over that hurdle, whatever weird cultural social disconnect is there.
Yeah.
The fact that I know you're reading makes it harder for me to listen.
It does. Because
It does. I
our
don't know what that
entertainment-based
is,
culture. Well, I mean,
but
it
that's how it
started.
is.
I mean, again, we've talked about this before, but Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, the main speaker wasn't the president. It was some really famous, I think, congregational preacher from Boston. And because of the speaking culture of the time, it was supposed to be this 2 hour sermon of just incredible diction and pronunciation, and it was supposed to be this masterpiece of this huge long lecture. And many people didn't like Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. It was too direct, too short, and like you're not taking it seriously. Of course, it's become now one of the
Right.
greatest speeches
Right.
ever given in American history. And the preacher, by the way, recognized that. I forget his name, but the Boston guy wrote the president and said, you got to the heart of the matter much better than in 2 minutes than I did in 2 hours.
Right.
Well done.
Right.
Um, so
All right.
yeah, that
Yes. I
and
then
also on the flip side,
yeah.
and it's amazing how the Lord works. Is of course in the end the Spirit is the one who uses the word.
Yeah, right, right,
There's
right. I
been
know. I know we tack that fact on at the end, but no,
yeah, yeah, because
that
I mean
is the
I
point.
preached I thought horrible sermons,
Right.
and
Right.
I'll meet someone like 20 years later and they were greatly moved by this sermon. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like,
Really?
and then like I'll preach horrible sermons and that a great sermon and no one notices it,
Yep.
or I'll preach something they totally did not hear what I said.
Uh-huh.
Totally went someplace out with it,
Yep.
but biblical,
Yep.
and they did something godly out of it, and I'm like, oh, okay, like that's not what I said whatsoever, but
I
it
know.
worked out.
I know. Well, that's
Yay!
happened.
Praise
That's
God!
happened to me. The
Yeah, it's
sermon
like,
will be happening, and a
yeah,
text will be read in a
yep,
particular context, which is
yep,
appropriate and it fits.
yep,
But I then look at it and I'm like, whoa, wait, that also fits in this other thing that I'm
yep,
dealing with. And what I get out of the sermon wasn't even the sermon.
yep, yep.
It's like it happens. Yes, yeah, I
His
know. All
word
right,
does not
so
come back void. Yeah,
right.
no,
Oh,
he
exactly,
uses the
exactly.
foolishness of preaching.
So
So
then,
I had,
yeah,
it's
all
getting
right.
towards the,
So restructuring, I'm fine with the restructure. Having a
yep,
sermon text is good. We agree, sermon text good.
some text good.
All things subservient to that text, but structured, right? Good.
But no, but
No,
it's a
no, I need
theme that,
it.
yeah,
But I need the structure. I
yeah, yeah,
need the
yeah,
structure of it. So we're gonna stick with that for now. I mean, I preach 2 times a year. It's not like I have a whole lot of practice for this.
yeah.
Um,
That's another thing, but
it is what it is.
yeah,
Um, writing things out, I'm still probably gonna stick with because I mean, look, there are certain topics that I could get up and preach with zero notes.
yeah.
I
Oh,
just
absolutely.
I
Ephesians
just
2.
know it. I could go
Yeah.
through it. I could
Yep.
give you a sermon and
Yep.
it could be very natural because I'd
Yep.
just be
Yep.
speaking it.
Yep.
I can't trust myself to do that every time. Right.
Oh no,
So
Calvin
I'm
could do
not
that,
going to
but
trust
yeah,
myself to do that every time.
yeah.
So I will write out the sermon and work on reading naturally, which is an interesting thing to work on. And if I can't get it, I don't know, then I'll go from there. Do you have other points? Because I don't care about the
I
length.
had one other thing.
Go
It's
ahead.
not, and again, it's not because the two main things. I only had one critique and negative, constructive criticism.
Hmm?
Again, actually, I thought it was a very good sermon. I wanted to talk about the notes, their second point and style, and that was more conversation. That was helpful. The only other thing, and this is not at all a critique. It was, and this is not bad for one sermon. It was gospel light. Now, I am haunted by Lutheran preaching, and I am not a full Lutheran preacher, but I have that law gospel distinction of preaching. I
Hmm.
think they take it too far. That sermon was perfectly fine. It was gospel light. That's okay.
Hmm.
My only critique would be if you were the consistent preacher, and there were
Hmm.
always gospel light, I would get worried. But
Hmm.
that's more for a series than a
Hmm.
particular one sermon. But I admit I've been biased by my Lutheran friends.
Hmm. The barbarians.
The
Um,
barbarians, the
the
Hun.
barbarians, the Germanic barbarians,
Yes.
the Germans.
Who defeated the
So
Romans, but the English defeated the Germans. But anyways, just saying.
English defeated the Germ. Yes, yes, they did.
Two
Yeah.
wars.
I,
Sorry.
um, you're not wrong.
Which is gonna be the title of the sermon, this
The
episode.
episode, you're not wrong.
Doug's not wrong.
Doug's not wrong. No, you're not
Again,
wrong.
I wouldn't change it. I
No,
wouldn't
no, 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 no,
change it.
no. But that's a
But
no, 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 no.
it's like a hymn of creation is beautiful, but that's the only type of hymns you sing. It's like,
Right, there's a problem.
yeah,
Could I have been? No,
I wouldn't.
because this was very,
Sanctification.
it was sanctification,
That's fine.
was it was communal, right?
Yep.
It was church focused
Yep. Awesome.
and
And
sanctification.
it wasn't devoid of the gospel. It was just gospel light. I wouldn't change it. I
Hmm.
wouldn't change it.
Hmm.
It's just a again, if you were consistently preaching and it was
That's an
consistently gospel
interesting
light, then
point.
it'd be like,
No, but I mean, it's a very, very good critique. Now, I hate to, hey, what, whatever. Speaking openly and regardless of how it comes across, I, I would hate it, right? So it worked as is, and therefore it's fine. Had I tried to be more gospel focused, there runs the risk on this particular sermon or topic of it being un inorganic, artificial, right? Oh, make sure to talk about this. Try to find where to fit it in. Now, I don't mean
verse
to say
21.
what's that?
Verse 21.
Well, right. Well, and again, the text wasn't on my things.
But see, if I may jump in, this
Yeah.
is where I do like the notion of law gospel preaching, but my hardcore Lutheran friends think it's the only way you should preach. And the sermon has to be like 50 to 75% gospel, where
Hmm.
it's like a little bit of the law and then just gospel. And
Right.
we're terrified of the third use of the law.
Right.
I They would yell at me because I can do sermons where it's like 95% law and then I tack on the gospel at the end.
Right.
There's a place for that. And again, verse, I mean, you're living out of verse 20
Right.
and
Which
20
was
and
the
really the first half
point.
of
Right.
21,
Right.
which is sanctification, it's the church.
Right.
I wouldn't change the sermon in that sense in the least. And you did end, there was, I think, at the end reference to the gospel. Of course, 21 ends in the gospel. So again, I wouldn't change the sermon, but it's just I
Hmm.
am not full Lutheran when it comes to preaching, but I do want the
I
Luther on my side, the little Luther on my shoulder, whispering, "Remember the gospel, remember the
Right. And the
gospel."
problem with the reason why I'm giving it such deep thought on that
Yeah,
critique
yeah.
is when writing this, I didn't give that any thought. Right.
Mm,
I didn't give any thought to, crudely put, where is Christ in this? Right.
mm.
There's reference to it. Now, to be fair, and this I guess gets into that distinction, right? The the epistles have both law and gospel, but not in every verse
Sure.
and not in every chapter, even necessarily, right? If you took one chapter, I mean, like, what's the easiest example that I'll throw out there? If you just strictly preached through Romans, the first three chapters are in and of themselves, broad strokes, gospel light because it's establishing. I know
Well, yeah, yeah.
it's
Well,
it's
from verse 18, chapter 1, verse 18 to 19 or
Right,
something.
right,
Yeah,
right. I don't mean
yeah,
all of it. I mean the introduction of
yeah,
it
because it's heavy
is
sin. Yeah, yeah,
amazingly
yeah,
gospel
yeah, yeah,
heavy, right? But
yeah,
all
yeah.
the
Just
introductions of the epistles are that,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because
You have
that
to get to verse
sets
18
up
or
the
yeah,
framework.
yeah,
But if you're writing a letter, and this is sermons are not letters, and so this isn't a very accurate analogy.
yeah, yeah.
If you're writing a letter, you can build, right? You can go 2, 3, 4 paragraphs without mentioning the cross
Yep,
necessarily
yep,
because
yep,
you're
yep,
building
yep.
on something. However, you use that to bring in or to transition into the gospel and the cross. When you have a sermon, right, in a Lutheran, we'll use that as the standard, you want to try to do both within 30 to 45 minutes.
Or
And to be
20 minutes if you're a
fair,
Lutheran.
what's that?
Sorry. If 20 minutes if you're a
Or
Lutheran.
20 minutes, whatever. 5 minutes if you're Augustine. Um, or the but I didn't explicitly tie any of this in with the gospel. And now granted, and we're not going to because it's totally a different topic. It's like, well, define me the gospel, which is in the Cambridge. No, not the Cambridge.
Romans chapter 1. Anyways.
Um, right. How could I have? I don't know. Yes, I think I would say I would agree with your evaluation that this was sanctification focused, not justification focused.
It was a
Right?
lot more law focused than gospel, but it wasn't bad.
It was
To use
more
Lutheran categories,
right.
it wasn't all law,
Right.
but if you had a hardcore,
It was
you know,
it was law heavy.
yeah.
Right.
And
Yep.
I'm not a full Lutheran preacher in that sense. It wouldn't offend me. A hardcore Lutheran would have been typical Baptist,
Right.
typical Reformed Baptist. Um, I think their extreme view is wrong, but their overall critique I
Mhm.
do like
Right.
that
Because
gospel powers in the gospel. So
right.
again, I wouldn't change it. It's just
Right.
I want to be haunted by the cross, as it were, and that's the
Right.
power of God. Because you've read it, the book Five Views of Sanctification or Five Views of something,
Mhm.
where you have Sinclair Ferguson and Fort Forty, the Lutheran scholar, debating back and forth about sanctification, and the Reform guy is a little more willing to use the third use of the law, the sanctification, doing stuff, and the Lutheran guy is like, no, no, you're doing too much. And I think they're both right. I
Right.
want to have that tension between those two.
I I
So again,
want I want to be Kirk is
right.
the idea.
Star Trek reference. Thank
I
you.
know I had to for you. Much like my quote of the Song of Songs, just for you.
I
I got
missed that. I'm so sorry.
I got Felicity for me and you got Song of Songs.
Yeah.
Um that we are
No, I noticed the dig against the being English
about
citizen, but
the, it wasn't a dig against the English. It was the
I
only
took it personally.
I
So
know, but that's fine. I laughed about that as well, but that wasn't the intent. It was the only example in American history where we have ever had non-American governance. Right. But that's the thing. Like, it's the only example that makes any sense
yeah,
to
yeah,
us. And even that makes zero sense to us because that
yeah,
was,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
forever
yeah,
ago.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
anyway, um, no, you're right. This was because even the closing points, right, is the
The closing was
reminder.
good.
The
Yeah,
closing points are still, and I guess unintentionally, it's
yeah,
that third point of speaking to move,
yeah,
right? The conclusion. So if it is a lecture, you don't have the third point necessarily. So again, the 3 points being to teach, to delight, and to move. And you can I'm being Augustinian here because again, I'm looking for structure, for training, for education. Um, Augustine makes the statement that if your intent is just to teach,
Yeah.
That third point to move is that you end up with agreement.
Yeah.
Everyone now agrees. There's no
Yeah.
more action required. If all
Yeah.
you're doing is teaching, agreement is the move. However, if you're trying to get there to be action, right, that would be the conclusion. I didn't try that here. I'm sort of analyzing it under that framework though. My concluding points were not matters of agreement or even, and I'll go with the gospel focus, and I don't mean to blaspheme here,
Yeah.
resting in Christ, right? My
Right.
conclusion wasn't rest in the gospel.
Right.
My conclusion was, therefore, because we are justified, therefore be sanctified. My conclusion wasn't
Yeah.
because we are justified, therefore rest in the gospel and be sanctified. Right? It was more a call to action as Christians and pilgrims.
And that's more reformed than it is Lutheran.
Right.
And again, no problem. I have, and again, my Lutheran friends would be offended, but I disagree. I'm repeating myself. I disagree with their extreme dogmatic, only one type of style of preaching. But again, I think they have a point
They're not
where,
wrong because you don't want to go from being reformed to being Puritan.
yeah, yeah, or a yeah, where you lose
A
all sight of
pietism,
the
right?
gospel. Yeah,
Pietism,
and
right?
because clearly, throughout the New Testament, even the Old, you're always weaving back to the gospel.
Right.
And I didn't, like I said, it wasn't a legalistic sermon in the
No,
bad sense, but
it
it was
was
law
gospel
heavy.
light.
Yeah,
That's not a bad
yeah,
critique.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and that is a challenge for me in how to, although I mean, like, again, maybe it's a challenge because I'm not Lutheran. Um, how do you weave? It's one of those, like, how do you weave the gospel in well
yeah.
without neglecting it, without neglecting sanctification? I know that I'm drawing distinctions that aren't necessarily strictly biblical, right? Those aren't mutually exclusive.
And
Um,
and
right.
and for
So,
those and for those listening in the audience, appreciate for good preaching how many different balls you have to keep juggling in the air at the same time, and then
right.
make it look well.
Make
And
sure
I'm not
you
trying
talk
to,
about the law and the gospel, justification and sanctification.
yeah, yeah, and make it interesting, but
Make it
don't,
interesting,
but don't tickle their ears.
right?
Yep,
Make it
yeah,
accessible, but don't dumb it down or condescend
yep,
in an insulting way,
yep.
right? It's like don't lose them, but don't adopt No Child Left Behind either.
Right.
You know,
In
right?
our
Don't
culture, which has no sense of focus.
right.
Yeah,
You try to get all of this into a 45-second TikTok video.
you're right, right.
Whatever.
Yep. You got what first 8 seconds or what 3 seconds to grab
Right.
someone's
You have
attention.
to capture their
Well,
attention or they're gonna leave. Be like,
that
you know what? They
that
should
was another. That's another thing I
need a
wrote
show.
down. Actually, this is going to be a two episode because we're going 2 hours now. Is how, I mean, there's the debate about humor, but how much do you do a really interesting grab at people at the beginning? Because again, you started slow, but that's not necessarily a criticism. Much better again, start slow and build up than do a tease and then have it fall apart,
Yeah.
just from a thematic point of view or at least style point of view.
Right.
But how do you begin? Because with writing or preaching, how you start, how you end. I mean, it is nice to have a little bit of a grab. I know I always like questions, but that's just my style.
I tried doing that.
Yeah.
I led with questions this time.
Well, but
my
and this is
my
and this is the
dialectic
frustration
approach.
that you don't control the listener.
Right.
What I was thinking was, oh, he's going out of Leviticus. No one preaches out of Leviticus. This is going to be manly preaching.
I know,
We're
I'm
going to have
so
this
sorry.
great detailed description of Leviticus.
No, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry that
Oh
I
my
that I
God.
let you down so
No,
tragically.
no, it was a really good sermon. That was really, but it's yeah, no, it's um yeah, and how much, and we have 15 minutes. Sure, let's do this.
That's fine.
How how I'm going to use a negative word, and you know where I'm going to be going, so you can correct me. How flashy should you be?
Mhm.
How much do you appeal to emotion? How much do you, do you try to reach people's hearts?
Listen here,
I'm
Mr.
a
Stoic. Continue.
Absolutely. Um, I hate that, and I find that insulting, and I try never to do that. And I wonder if I'm too rigid on that.
Right.
I'm too. I I mean, like I remember this again going with personal things. My father used to come home from church and said that he goes, that was a great sermon, and my father was at best a nominal Christian. And I'm like, why? I'm like, why was it a great sermon, Dad? He goes, oh, the pastor said this really great joke, made everyone laugh. I'm like, okay. Um, what was the sermon about? He was like, oh, I
Right.
don't know. Like, did you learn anything? No. Well, can you tell me what the joke was? No.
Right.
I'm like,
You remember
all
the
right.
emotion, but nothing
Yeah,
else.
yeah. So I'm
Right.
like, so I've literally said in sermons, we strive to be as boring as possible here.
Right. Which
But
I
you can
think I
over.
achieved with flying colors this past Sunday.
No, it was a good sermon. I left convicted. I left interested. I, the ending, you ended really well. That was a very good sermon. And I'm linking on TRC because
Yeah.
our recording went wrong.
Yes. Yes, you can. I
So
will be your virtual guest preacher.
yes, absolutely. So the God, the Almighty's providence.
Oh,
So I mean, we've talked about this a little because of all your pagan readings.
yes.
Um,
All the
you
all the
you
all the pagan
are
stuff.
you more, but you didn't model it in your sermon. Are you, am I being too harsh in my,
The
no, I mean, like no playing on the emotions. I want to be folksy, but I don't want to play on the emotions.
No.
What do you think?
So there is a distinction that needs to be made.
Yes.
You're not wrong, but you're only speaking of one category, I think.
Yes.
So I think
Yes.
on this, um, so yes, the and I'm not going to give any explanation. People have the internet. So I had as I had discussed, and this will be lost on everyone except two people who have any reading of Plato. Um, Plato hated the sophist, but loved
Yes.
the philosopher. The philosopher is the truly enlightened, and the sophist is the one who just uses things for their own personal gain. So, in pondering what is the modern equivalent, if a sophist was if a philosopher was a theologian, what would the equivalent of the sophist be? And it would be the prosperity gospel preacher.
Yeah.
It
Yes.
is
Absolutely.
one who uses rhetoric as a structure to manipulate for personal gain, wealth, praise, fame, so on and so forth. So modern day sophists are prosperity gospel preachers. Your critique, which is accurate, is of the rhetoric of the prosperity gospel preacher. It's an abuse of a style of speaking for shallow ends. Now, the way that I frame these two things, because the emotion in the speaking or in the sermon or in the story isn't what's wrong. I think there are two things that make it wrong. One, why you're doing it, right? If you're doing it to be attractive, you're doing it wrong, right? People will pay me more money if I'm a good entertainer, right?
Absolutely.
Pastors can be entertaining, they are not to be entertainers,
Right.
right? Um
Right.
I think the example that I use though for the right way versus the wrong way, if you in a Pauline fashion, when appropriate contextually, share a personal experience which is fitting to the topic, is honest or genuine, and may be emotionally moving, I don't see a problem with that. Paul uses
Yeah, but
himself
Paul,
as an example.
but it's but I can.
However,
He's
no,
an
not yet,
apostle.
not yet, not yet. Oh, well, of course he was an apostle. That doesn't mean that you're not only apostles have feelings. Look, it's
That's okay.
okay
Yeah.
to talk about an experience when it is appropriate and not
Yeah.
for the sake of, let me make all of you feel a certain way, right? The point shouldn't be, this is a good tearjerker, I'm going to throw it in there. if it is appropriate to explain the situation or to be accessible, right? To be folksy. I'm going to be a human being up here. Guess what? I may be a pastor, but I'm also a sinner. I also am a human. I also have struggles, right? Talking about that or like that, not a problem. Obviously, it's not a
Yep,
therapy.
I do
Ouch.
that.
Don't make
Yeah,
it about you, right? That's
yeah,
not the
yeah.
point. However, my criticism, if you tell about someone else's experience because it's emotional, now I have a problem. If you
No, I
want to
agree with that.
talk
Like
about,
yeah.
right, if you want to talk about your your life experience
Yeah.
when appropriate, fine, awesome. If you're going to talk about some seventh generation hand me down anecdote tribal story about some
Yep.
17th century English Christian boy who was moved because he met whomever, I'm like, that's not your story. That's not your life.
Or you get it from a preaching book of antidotes.
Oh,
That's
well, I mean,
that's
that's even
horrible.
worse. Right.
Those
If
exist, by the way.
yes, if your
Yeah.
anecdotal expressions are someone else's emotional experience,
Yeah.
that to me, I'm like, look, if you want,
Can I give you an example?
uh,
I want to.
yes, example away. Your camera's blurry. Put your hand up.
Has it been blurry for the whole thing?
I don't know. I don't look. There you go. It's fine now. I just
Oh.
noticed it now. Maybe I noticed it before and I didn't say anything.
An
Whatever.
hour and yeah,
No, I don't think it's been blurry this whole time.
an, an hour and
It's fine
50
now.
minutes in, we figured.
Just
Now,
tell people to
so
close
so
their
so
eyes.
so 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 here's something like I'll give you a real example because I agree. Like when I talk about sin and I go hard after sin, I usually use it myself
Right.
as softening a little for the congregation to that's like, look, the only person I really know anything about truly is myself, and
Right.
I wrestle with this, blah blah blah. I mean, there's you can do that incorrectly, I understand that, and you can do narcissism, and that's dangerous.
Right.
So I mean, I don't mind talking about myself a little, but try to give it very little. But I'll give you an example that I think we talked about this in private. I've been preaching through First Samuel, and I've been spending a lot of time talking the story of Hannah, of how she dedicated Samuel unto the Lord.
Hmm.
I have a very similar experience. I
Yes.
almost died as a child.
Mhm.
They gave me like the wrong blood transfusion or something. They came to my mother and literally said, like, he's probably not going to make it.
Yep.
My mother pulled a Hannah and said, look, if you let him live, you can have him. And I have no preachers in my family as far as I can figure out. And I ended up being a preacher.
Mhm.
And that's a very powerful personal testimony. That's a very that would like people would perk up. I'll be crass. I get credit as a like ooh, our pastor's special.
Right.
I intentionally took that. I refused to put that in the sermon
Yep.
because I thought that was way too focusing upon myself and not the text. I want you to be moved by the text, not by my personal story.
Right.
And if there was any story to put it into, it was First Samuel chapter 1.
Hmm.
I did not. And if I heard in some other pastor doing it, I'd be like, okay, but whatever. I personally think it's a mistake, though it would have been a much more effective speaking point that would have grabbed people's attention. But I'm like, nope, I want the scriptures to be the focus. What do you think?
I don't think that you were wrong. I think in your discernment, you viewed your experience as detracting from what should have been the focus, and you correctly left it out. Right? I don't think that that was wrong that you did that.
If
If you
another
had
preacher,
if you had put it in,
yeah,
if you didn't have that conviction, right? Let's say,
yeah,
because if you had that conviction and you put it in anyway, then you definitely messed up,
yeah.
right? If you didn't have that conviction, if you if you put it in because it
I'll
was
spin it. It testifies to the power of God today. I'll
right,
spin it in a nice way.
sure,
Yeah,
right, showing that
which
we
I
are
don't
not
like.
full
Oh, I
cessationists
like
for
all
a
stuff. Yeah,
reason,
yeah.
right? God clearly does do
Yeah.
things, miraculous things in this life.
Yeah.
Um, Again, like I don't think that it would be wrong if you included it.
See, I
I
think it
don't.
is.
My concern, you'd have to do it correctly,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Don't use it as a standard.
Yep.
Therefore, you can make bargains with God, right?
Yep.
Don't go there. Don't go Pentecostal or something on
Yep.
it. Um, I mean, I think the only thing about that, the only thing, the even if it weren't a concern about detracting from Scripture, taking away from what should be the focus, even if that wasn't necessarily the concern.
Yeah.
I guess the reason why I say that it's good you didn't put that in there is because it wasn't an experience that added anything. It wouldn't have added understanding, it wouldn't have added relatability,
Oh,
right?
no, no, no. It would add relatability. It would add attention. People
Well,
would perk up.
no,
People would like
it wouldn't have made it more, I mean, all
for
right, well
for for.
maybe,
If
right?
I was
Maybe
a
because it makes it
politician, 100% go there.
more immediate
Yeah.
or more, I guess it would have been relatable, not in the fact of people
Oh,
didn't
and
understand what was going on
yeah.
already, but
Yeah.
because now it hits close to home,
Yep.
right? I guess that's the thing, the hitting close to home. Um, I don't, I don't know. If you put that in there, would you be wrong? I don't know.
I my answer is yes. My
I mean,
answer, but
if
maybe I'm
you
being
did with that conviction, I mean, yeah, I mean, yes, yes, which is
because
why.
the focus becomes upon me. The focus speak and the I mean, how do you know it's true or not? Let alone that. I mean, okay,
Well, I
fine,
mean,
trust your
ignore.
pastor over it.
Sure.
But my main concern is the focus becomes much more about me, and
Mm,
I am but a mere herald. And I want the excitement and the focus to be upon what the word said and what Hannah's great prayer is and what the Lord did to Hannah, because that you have certainty about. And there's something there. It to me, I mean, it would be interesting. I mean, I'll be honest, as a parishioner, part of me would probably like that's kind of cool. There's something very exciting about that because
right.
almost well, it's the Bible, it's an ancient times, but oh, wow, this really is true. It confirms things, and even
Right.
that's a problem. I Yeah, no, and yeah, I mean, yeah, it does Paul does talk about that, but I, as I said, he is an apostle. That's you know he wrote scripture, he prophesized, and it makes me uncomfortable. But again, is it just a cultural thing? My good
Right.
Englishness coming through. All emotion should be avoided. All strong emotion should be avoided because it just
Right.
it
Right.
must
Which
be
I think is
proper.
a is
Yeah,
an overcorrection in the wrong direction.
exactly, and,
Right.
and that's why.
But
Hey,
you're
yeah,
not wrong in wanting to avoid the experiential is the authority,
yeah, and
right?
that's an
Because
easy trap.
experiential is never the authority. The truth of scripture is true regardless of
Yeah.
our experiences.
Because I've seen preachers take a tear-jerking story about some mother and child
Oh, I
from
know.
some book.
So
They lead the sermon with that. I look out and half the women are in tears. But then when they get to the end of the scripture text about the risen Christ and his forgiveness, all our brains are shut off. And
right.
I'm like, and should the good preacher somehow, by the grace of God, not do that silly story, even if it's a personal story for sake of argument, but so elevate Christ that the hearts are moved.
And it's an interesting thing because I want to get very specific. And boy, I wish that I had read all the things that are on my list of reading because I wonder if these topics are covered in there. Um,
That's why I
if
have AI.
if you're right, uh, a matter of it's funny because we're using examples which are, I guess, in simple terms, negative emotion, right? Like or amazing, amazement or sorrow,
Yeah.
right? And that is not, if you will, the same as I keep going back to to delight, right? Because you use that term uplifting. Because even as you were talking about that, and I was thinking, I think of what's that? The Passion of the Christ, the Mel Gibson movie,
Yeah.
and it was this attempt to humanize the character of Jesus from the Bible, right?
Yep.
To experience what he experienced, and you should come out of this movie feeling like a good Roman Catholic and horribly guilty and painful because of all the suffering your sin caused Christ. Right? Keep him up on that cross. Let's ignore the fact that he's in heaven, no longer bleeding. No, no, no. Keep him on the bleeding cross because that's how you make people feel something. Right? But even that is not delighting. Right? There's no delight in that. There is delight in the gospel. Right? That actually uplifts us. And isn't that more the concept and literally the word throughout scripture of the admonition, the encouragement, the lifting up, right? It ought to be positive. Now, not positive as in you're a stand-up comedian telling jokes. Again, that's an abuse of rhetoric for the wrong purposes. But right, trying to move people, and I guess I'm being specifically critical on the let's pick a tearjerker, right? That I think is probably inappropriate in every single context, right? It's not about you feeling bad. Nobody should be trying to make you feel bad. If the Spirit of God convicts you of your sin, good. And then the salve of the gospel should be applied right after.
Yeah.
Good. Right. That's your emotional experience, if any.
It's
The point shouldn't be to try to craft an emotional experience. A sermon shouldn't be an emotional roller coaster. Right. So is it wrong? But that's the thing. And I'm going to point this out. I think yes. So I guess to your concern, if I had to if I had to give a simple answer, should sermons ever be experiential? I'm going to be super broad. No. No, in the strictest of sense.
Yeah.
I mean,
A little.
a
It's
little
not
as in this was a great revelation for me. And whatever. Like it's fine to make mention of the fact that you're a human being preaching and that you've experienced something, like, in short. Should it be story time? No. Because as you point out, and you're right in doing so, as soon as you engage in anecdotal anything, you've now making bacon.
Making it.
You've now
Speaking
made
well. Speaking good.
Macon, Georgia. You've now made the character of your sermon. The main character of your sermon has now become whomever the main character of that anecdote is.
The heralds
main character
become
of
the
your
characters.
sermon should be Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be you, and it shouldn't be whoever was in the story you just told. Right. And it shouldn't be the audience, the congregation. The main character of scripture is Christ, which is why so many of us find scripture utterly boring. It's because it's not about us, it's about him.
And
now the burden of the preacher, and I will say this, and not to the burden of the preacher is to make what would otherwise due to cultural stupidity something that is boring actually delightful. Again, not to manipulate, not to try, but as much as it should be accessible and vulgar, not to speak over, you do have to understand your audience, and we are all human. And as I said before, even I have to put forth effort if the style is something with which I don't like.
Mm-hmm. What's wrong? Oh, thank you.
Go now.
It has been 2 hours.
Right.
I do have to run.
I'm done then with that rant. I don't know.
So we have completely modeled the exact opposite everything we've said in this. We've rambled incoherently for 2 hours with many points.
Pointless discussion
and with no ending. Though that's a pretty good ending. My wife
it was
came
neither
in,
concise, succinct, terse, pithy, brief, compact, or
spoken well.
Right? No, it's all.
But but
all over the
yeah,
place.
but that great line, 1 Corinthians 2:2, for I'm determined to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ and
Right.
Him crucified.
Okay.
But
Yes.
this was helpful. And we need to do one of my sermons, just to be fair.
Sure.
But I do have to run. This is gonna be a
No, that's
two-parter.
fine. We'll end.
But but
Uh,
you were ending very well. Do you want to
we'll
just
end with
finish that
no, no,
last
no, no,
sentence?
no. In good fashion of all of my other sermons, we're not going to
Stop.
conclude. We're just going to stop. So thank you all for joining. Take care.